backpackers, Tufo on Mozambique's spectacular coast is a must-visit destination. But 2 years ago, 20-year-old Australian Ellie Warren was found dead in the off-the-beaten-track paradise, her body callously discarded near a toilet block. Since then, it's been a living hell for her family in Melbourne, and made worse because detectives in Mozambique seemed more interested in ignoring the homicide than investigating it. Their attitude infuriated Ellie's dad Paul so much, he decided to travel to Africa in the hope of uncovering vital clues. His journey is heartbreaking and bittersweet, but as you'll see, he succeeds.
Where are you from?
Australia.
Australia.
20-year-old Ellie Warren lived for adventure. Like so many young Aussies, she had an insatiable desire to see the world and meet new people.
Ellie was a girl that really, she knew what she wanted to do, and there's no way in the world that I could have stopped her. Even Nicole says, her mother says the same thing. There's no way possible. She had her dreams, and she loved the African people and the culture there.
She was full of life. She was always happy, always on the go. There was never enough hours in the day to get to get all the things done that she wanted. She'd get up in the morning and she would cram as much as she possibly could into her day.
But when Ellie set off on her latest trip to Mozambique in 2016, her divorced parents, Paul and Nicole, could never have imagined it would be her last.
Devastated family and friends have paid tribute to a Mordialloc woman killed while travelling in Mozambique. Ellie Warren's sister spoke of the heartbreaking...
Now, 2 years on from her death, the family is united in searching for answers, while still coming to terms with a completely botched investigation, which has allowed a killer to roam free.
We're dealing with people that don't care. As far as I'm concerned, they're not doing anything over there. It's ridiculous.
It must be infuriating as well.
Well, it's frustrating too. It's more frustrating than anything else that nothing's being done.
Tonight, this distraught and desperate father's crusade for justice as he follows his daughter's final footsteps, uncovering evidence that could be a turning point in this case.
If you want to get something done, you've got to do it yourself. Forget about the authorities, right? You have to go there and do it yourself.
So you think the photo's the game changer here?
The photo's definitely the game changer here. I've come back and now I've got the answers. I've got them.
I'm sitting in a tree with a sloth.
In 2016, Ellie spent 6 weeks working and diving for a marine conservation group, Africa Underwater, in the picturesque backpacker hotspot of Tufo in Mozambique. How was she enjoying it?
She was loving it. Yeah, she was loving it. And when she first saw her first whale shark, that sort of made it all worthwhile for her.
But just a few days before she was due to fly home to Australia, her lifeless body was discovered sprawled in the dirt next to this toilet block.
I got a phone call from my other daughter, Christy, and she was hysterical over the phone. And then she settled down and she actually said Ellie's been murdered overseas. And oh God, I tell you, my heart dropped. It's just a phone call that no parents would ever is just, I can't comprehend it.
Well, initially we were told that Ellie had been murdered. and that potentially there'd been a sexual assault as well. So again, from a mother's point of view, very difficult to accept not knowing who, how or why.
It's hard enough to get your head around your daughter being killed overseas, but when you hear murder and sexual assault, how do you even begin to process that?
Yeah. I don't think we have really. I think because we don't have answers to a lot of questions, it makes it hard there's really no closure for us.
Despite being Australian, Ellie's death could only be investigated by Mozambique police, and it's now clear they were either totally out of their depth or just unwilling to uncover the truth. Forensic analysis found no evidence of drugs in her system, but still the first formal police report, released 6 months after her death, stated Ellie died from a drug overdose.
They can't put their police report out, which was only a page and a half, and the first one came out with an overdose.
But then you've got toxicology reports saying there's no drugs in the system.
No, complete toxicology reports, hair sample, liver sample from Melbourne, from South Africa, no drugs whatsoever.
How do you think they come up with an overdose then?
They sent out a second revised police report. They pasted and copied the autopsy results, put that on the page, and then they decided that because the autopsy results said it was a homicide, they've decided now after 4 days that it's a homicide. So what's the credibility in that? There's no credibility whatsoever. As far as I'm concerned, they're not doing anything over there.
This is the translated copy of the police report detailing the original autopsy results.
Mechanical asphyxiation, the introduction of sand content, the obstruction of the superior and inferior respiratory airways by sand, direct suffocation that is being treated as a homicide.
And it's all there in black and white. Suffocation, homicide.
Yes, yeah.
But the investigators just seem to ignore that.
Well, I can't, and I don't understand that, Tom.
Ellie choked to death on sand, but this location where her body was found is hard-packed earth. Something just wasn't right. Paul knew his daughter had been murdered. But as the months wore on, the family wasn't getting any closer to finding the killer. So last month, Paul packed his bags and headed to Tullamarine Airport to catch a plane to Johannesburg.
I have to follow in Ellie's footsteps, go and talk to the locals and see what happened to my daughter, you know. Like, it's at the moment, it's up in the air. It's a suspected a murder. What are the Mozambique authorities going to do about this? What are they going to do? Sweep it under the carpet and put it in the 2-hour basket? You know, it's just not on.
You've come to rattle the cage.
Yeah, it's not good enough. It's not good enough at all. And, you know, the family is really frustrated about this.
Are you glad Paul's going over there to get some answers?
Yes, I am. I was a little concerned and worried about, I suppose, his safety, but also what information he might be able to get. We were hopeful that the Mozambique authorities would have collected all the information, interviewed people, had samples and all of that, but really it appears that they haven't. So if Paul can uncover something that they haven't, that's got to be a benefit to the case, yes.
Tufo lies on the Mozambique coast, a 20-minute drive from the local airport of Inhambane. This country is still feeling the effects of a brutal civil war, so tourism here is a much-needed source of revenue.
I arrived here last night, and this is the first morning, and you know, this place has really got it. It's a magical place, and I can understand why Ellie would really love it here, you know.
It's not hard to see why people would want to come here. It's beautiful, But it wasn't long before Paul was warned such beauty can come at a price.
The embassy need to know that you are wrong. The embassy need to know that you are on your own investigating it, just for your own protection as well. Because Mozambique people disappear. I mean, there's a banana republic, it's a civil war country. So it takes a nothing to take somebody out and dump him in the ocean.
Coming up, uncovering the shocking photo
It's a huge piece of evidence.
that proves Ellie's death was no accident.
Everybody that looks at it knows straight out that Ellie was murdered.
Ultimately, there's no other conclusion you can come to.
But still, the police refuse to act.
Blatant cover-up.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Paul Warren has come to Tufo, Mozambique to investigate his daughter's death here in 2016. One of the few leads he has to go on is this photo, the last known picture of Ellie alive, drinking water with friends at sunset on the night she died.
This seat and table here is the last photo taken of Ellie when she was alive, with the bottle of water on the table.
It's an unimaginably harrowing task for any father, going back to the spot where his daughter's body was found next to this public toilet. Throughout the small town, he puts up posters pleading for information. And within just 24 hours, he uncovers what local police haven't found in 2 years. The photo that you've unearthed seems to be the big piece of evidence here.
It's a huge piece of evidence here, yes.
What in that photo says to you Ellie's been
Look,
murdered?
it's a terrible photo. It's a clear picture of Ellie lying face down in the sand, her legs apart, her underpants down around her knees, and she's got black sand all over her, on her bottom, on her arms, on her head, and on her top. It's a terrible photo. Everybody that looks at it knows straight out that Ellie was murdered.
The photo that he's uncovered in Mozambique, which he purchased from their phone, they had copies of it. First of all, the Mozambique police authorities didn't have that photograph, yet Paul was offered it to him, walking down the street at a small price. Just goes to show, I think, that there hasn't been too much of an investigation done. It's difficult to accept because you can see that she certainly struggled.
Does it kind of sum up just how awful this whole process is for you guys, that you have to travel halfway around the world and pay a stranger for a photo of his dead daughter?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, realising in Australia this would never happen. I mean, a full investigation would be done.
This is the photo that Paul managed to uncover in Mozambique.
Yep.
How much does that say to you? Ellie didn't just fall over and die. She met with foul play.
That's right. It's clearly a foul play murder of Ellie in some form. And ultimately, there's no other conclusion you can come to.
In his 4 decades in the Victorian Police Force, Charlie Bazina became one of the state's top homicide detectives. He's analysed the investigation by the Mozambique police and says it's deeply flawed. So you don't think it's possible she's just fallen over and breathed in the sand and choked on that?
I don't believe it is. You cannot inhale sand and asphyxiate on sand because you are coughing and you're splurting. There is some other form that's either held Ellie down in some form or pushed sand in her mouth and just held her there, because you will be putting up a major fight to breathe that amount of sand into your airways. Very, very difficult.
How astonishing is it for you that the police report says violent death? It says homicide. And they've pretty much done nothing since then.
Very much. It just, to me, it's been treated just like a normal accident of some sort, even a drug overdose as they suspected. Now, is it corruption? Is it incompetence? Or is it just the fact they're looking after their tourist trade over there?
This is a photo of Ellie taken by the fishermen. The very first person who got there.
This woman was the first person to identify Ellie. The conversation was recorded by Paul on an undercover camera, and we've blurred faces to protect identities. She's shocked by the photo because when she saw Ellie around an hour after that picture was taken, she wasn't lying flat on the ground, but in a completely different position.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Like I say, I didn't go over.
So she wasn't like that?
No, she was in Muslim prayer position.
That's how she was found.
So she was repositioned.
Yep.
She was in Muslim prayer position. She was like this.
They both said that Ellie was in a Muslim prayer position. So the two police officers there at the crime scene changed the crime scene to make out that Ellie had gone to the toilet and fallen forward in the sand. There's no question about it. They are the facts, right? They changed the crime scene, those two police officers.
So it's a blatant cover-up.
Blatant cover-up. Blatant cover-up from the Tufo police. Now, you know what? Until I got there, right, they all thought, everybody thought there was drugs involved, there was alcohol. Ellie had passed out in the sand from going to the toilet. They had no idea. The crime investigation, the top crime investigation person, didn't even have that photo of Ellie lying flat on the mat. I gave it to them.
It's clear that Ellie was suffocated and then her body dumped next to the toilet block. Local police now acknowledge that she didn't die here because the sand in her lungs was a different colour. Tufo residents are now willing to accept the fact Ellie was murdered.
My view, that's my personal view.
Yeah.
And I don't care who listens to
Yep.
my view. Ellie didn't fall in her face and die.
No, I don't think so either. So you're basically saying that she struggled?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hands down. My body was very painful.
Oh, right.
But also with Ellie, it was death, nothing else.
Definitely murder.
There are a number of key questions that are still unanswered. First, if Ellie was murdered, then why? At this stage, no one knows. Certainly, there were no signs of sexual assault in the autopsy, so perhaps Ellie saw something she shouldn't have, or maybe this was a robbery gone wrong. But the other big question in this case is why haven't the police in Mozambique taken this death seriously? Is it a case of them wanting to protect the reputation of the town's lucrative tourism sector? So you think, in their minds, if they don't acknowledge it's a murder, then a murder never happened here?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of crime that goes on there that's not reported about. And so, yeah, I do think that they're trying to just hope it just goes away. With time, it'll go away and no one will ask, too many more questions.
But Paul Warren is determined the people of Mozambique and Australia don't forget his daughter. On his final day in Tufo, he erected this monument to Ellie.
Nicole, Ellie's mother, said, go get some flowers for her. Flowers, yeah. And David, Ellie's stepfather, wanted me to put fly eyes indeed.
How much of a toll is this taking on you mentally?
Oh, it's very stressful. But I know I need to do it for Ellie. I have to protect her dignity here. And it's just devastating that, to know that I should have been there earlier. It's just devastating, that my little kid that they've done this to her. It's just hopeful. I don't know.
At least you've gone there, though. You're fighting.
I'm fighting, yes, and I need support from the Australian government. You think about being in my shoes for 1 minute, right? You need to do something about this.
Who does the buck actually stop with on this? Who can get this investigation to the next level?
Well, basically, it's all about invite. The federal police haven't been assisting Paul and Ellie's mum in relation to this, and been open in what they can do, but it's certainly by invite. You cannot just go into another country and say, we'll do our own investigation, or can we come in as observers? So it's a matter of, can any pressure be put on politically by our politicians here back onto their government? That's the only answer that I can see.
So to the police in Mozambique, you'd say, if you've got nothing to hide, invite some Australian investigators over and see what they can unearth.
Absolutely, for their own credibility. What are you hiding? Even it's not too late now for them to throw the whole books open and say, federal police officers, please come over and you can review what we've got and tell us where we could go. There is no time limit on murders. There is no time limit on losing a loved one.
It's my first thought every morning and my last thought every evening, and everything in between. And I think sometimes as time goes on, it gets harder, and perhaps because, I miss her every day, but knowing that there is someone responsible for her murder out there, and nothing's, enough is not really being done to try and find them.
Ellie's ashes were scattered a kilometre out to sea off Mordialloc Pier. Port Phillip Bay is where she loved to go sailing with her dad.
Hey Christy, it's actually a really, really nice day today. You should have come out. It's perfect.
This was her playground, where her spirit of adventure was born.
She loved the water. I went sailing with her. She just loved it.
This would be her happy place by
That's
the
her
water.
happy place by the water. She used to jump off this pier,
What's it like for you when you come back here these days?
Oh, it's devastating, Tom. It's devastating, It's just, she's such a treasure and she loved life so much, and it's just something that should never happen.
Doing your best to get the justice.